Hello and Happy New Year. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to GitLab's January Reseller Sales Enablement session. This is Vivian Getz, Channel Success Manager, and today I will be joined by one of our security experts on presenting how to present the GitLab security message to your customers and prospects. So Cindy will be presenting the presentation to you as you should be presenting it to your customers and prospects. We will be taking questions in the Q&A box listed at the bottom of the screen, kind of middle section. And other than that, we are ready to kick this off. So I'd like to introduce Cindy Blake, our security expert. She'll take us through this presentation, and feel free to list any questions in the Q&A section as we go on.
Great.
Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Vivian. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to take you through the deck that is that's online. So this is the security pitch deck. So we have the corporate pitch deck and the security pitch deck. And I'll try to give you some pointers as we go through, but I'm basically going to present it as you would to a customer. So we start with a look at some of the risks. Now here, my suggestion to you would be, you might want to switch out this slide with if there was a current breach, much more recent breach, something within your geography that you want to point out, or within the industry of the person that you're talking to. You can swap these boxes out and put something in here that may be a little bit more relevant to the individual that you're talking to, but that's sort of an option. I think everyone knows security is important and a risk at this point, so you could even leave it out if you feel the need. The real important message, though, is that application security is critical. If a breach can bring down a company, at the same time that it's important, people are trying to move faster, develop software faster, but you can't cut corners. So how do you secure your applications but also move faster so that you're enabling the business? And that's really the main part of the issue here. So the successful businesses are going to be those that find the right balance between risk, cost, and agility. And I would propose that to do this, you're going to have to think out of the box. The application security tools that are out there, like Fortify and Veracode and some of the others, they've been market leaders for years. They've been out there for 10 or 15 years, but they were built before Agile was commonplace and before DevOps. They were really intended for a workflow from a different era. So now that we're in the more modern software development era, where we have iterative development and minimal viable product and DevOps and the various elements and tools there, traditional gated security really just doesn't fit anymore. And this goes hand in hand with the trends that GitLab itself is embracing. So, people do want to shift left with their security efforts. They recognize that it's less expensive for the developer to find the vulnerabilities and do the remediation than it is for security to do it later and right before things are pushed to production. But they have this desire, but there aren't really any good tools for doing that. They need to go beyond the spell check like functionality with a light SaaS that's offered by those leading vendors. It's a separate tool. It doesn't talk with anything. It's they recognize that they need to go further, and they need to scale their application security programs. So you all hear that there's 300 developers to every one application security professional, and so how can that one person help 300 developers? And they end up doing a lot of tasks that can be automated, to be honest. And so that's a key part of some of the changes that are going on. Serverless, cloud native, all of that is important. Those things are not best suited to the traditional application security tools. So there's a lot of startups out there that are promising container security and different things, but they're startups. They haven't proven their scale, and they will get acquired. There's a lot of movement in the market in that regard. So the other piece is cloud agnostic. So we are cloud agnostic, and that's a really important movement because people don't want to be beholden to a particular vendor. And with Microsoft buying GitHub, it really puts a stake in the ground in terms of their direction of using GitHub as an on-ramp to Azure. And so you'll find that, you know, customers are a little bit wary of getting pulled into a particular vendor's ecosystem and they can't get out. So the fact that we're cloud agnostic, that helps. And zero trust. Zero trust is becoming really important. It's been around for about 10 years. It's something that Forrester talks a lot about. And what it assumes is that you will get breached. Just assume that you will. And how do you protect your data and the applications that work on the data in that environment where your perimeters are not safe? And so it comes down to identity access, identity management and access management, encryption, and application security. And so those elements are going to become more and more important in the next couple of years, and now. And so the fact that we can help the applications be portable from one environment to another, from one cloud to another, is important for GitLab. It's also an important element from a security standpoint, because what it means is companies that have been relying on more traditional network security, that depends upon the application being in a known environment, in a known location. When you get into a much more dynamic environment where that app can run in several different places, those things, that security framework falls apart. So application security is really, really important. Now, the other problem that we're solving for is the tool chain crisis. So the fact that if you're going towards DevOps, if you ask companies, how many tools are you using? I was doing a lot of executive roundtables in the fall this year, and one of the things I would ask to understand where they were in the DevOps maturity is, you know, are you using 2 tools, 10 tools, 50 tools? And the ones that are fairly mature in their DevOps, they are stitching together, you know, 20 or more tools in a very complicated tool chain, and spending a lot of resources doing it. So the fact that GitLab is a single application from end to end is good, not only from a software development lifecycle standpoint, but it's good from the standpoint of security as well, because if you look at what happens when you layer security into that, so a lot of the traditional application security tools offer these as individual products. In fact, I kind of borrowed this this image from Veracode, and some of their literature. They show they've got the SaaS Lite for within the web IDE. They've got, you know, static, dynamic. These are all individual products that you have to buy, and they don't talk to one another. And then all of those individual products then have their own need to interface with all of those DevOps tools at the bottom. So you can quickly see the compounded problem of the toolchain integration when you layer in security. So again, going back to the strength that we have one application from end to end across the software development lifecycle, it just erases all of that complexity. And so if you paint the image of where people can go to, and I would paint this image, you can do it with security, you can do it with dev, either one. I believe that development, like a VP of development, is really our sweet spot. And really the folks that you should be targeting, even for the security discussions. Security is going to be a little bit more of, they have to get on board. They need to support it. They may fund the difference between whatever level, tier of GitLab and Ultimate in order to get to those security capabilities. But security won't go out and buy GitLab on their own and then tell development, hey, you've got to use this CI/CD platform. That it doesn't work that way. So dev is really where you start, and security is more of, you need to get them on board so they don't become a barrier. And the picture that you can paint to dev is, what if you could scan all of your code every time? You don't want to be in the headlines as that guy that brought down the company because you released insecure code. How do you, you want to have it seamless. It needs to be seamless within the developer's workflow. So there's not context switching of having to go learn a security tool or, get out of your development environment and go use some other tool. What if you could have one workflow that included security using fewer tools and one source of truth that gets everybody on the same page? And that's what GitLab offers. So the fact that we embed security right in the middle of CI/CD, and I like to, when I'm pitching GitLab to people that aren't familiar with GitLab, particularly in the security space, since they really don't know who GitLab is, they may have heard of us as a repository. You can say we started as a repo and then we added a world-class CI/CD, which Forrester puts at the top of their wave. And we have embedded security into that CI/CD workflow. You can talk about the great customers that we have. Feel free to, to edit this for the industry that you're targeting or the particular customer that you want to target. But, key point there actually is also our customers love GitLab. And in fact, Goldman Sachs loved us so much that they bought into us as an investor as well. So I think that's a really cool data point there. Now, from a security standpoint, now I'm going to focus more on security and how we do security testing. So I mentioned that security is embedded in CI/CD, and it's all of these tools, all of these scans. It's static, dynamic, dependency scanning, license management or license risk, which we'll get into a little bit, and container scanning. All of these things are built into the merge request. Now, depending on who you're talking to, if you're talking to development, they understand what a merge request is. If you're talking to security, they won't necessarily understand what a merge request is. And so the real key here is that you're empowering the individual developer to use these, to get the results automatically from these different scans right there in their development environment before the code that they're working on ever leaves their hands and gets pushed into, merged into a branch with anyone else's code. So that's really key. And so from a pipeline standpoint, we like to show the pipeline picture that, as they commit their code, all of these tests are automatically executed. And then the results show up in the merge request report for the developer. And here's how it differs. So, in a traditional application security environment, the developer does his or her thing. The code is committed. It's merged with other people's code, and it gets down to a test environment where there could be lots of different developers' code mixed in there. And then it's tested. And you would run, dynamic scan requires a working application. So it's usually very late in the game at that test environment where you've got a dynamic scan. Security usually runs that, not dev doesn't have anything to do with it. They get a report. It shows all of the vulnerabilities, some of which could have been easily remediated, but the developer didn't know they were there. And maybe some of them require a little bit more effort, but the security department is going to see all of them. Then they've got to look at the kind of scoring those and seeing which are the most important and triaging them. And eventually it gets back to the developer. It might be a week later, it might be 2 weeks later, they might be on to another project. Then they've got to do context switching to get their head back into that particular project and kind of revisit it and see what's wrong. And it's got to get, in the queue, the issues and so forth. So the traditional approach has all of these latencies built into the workflow. Now, here's how GitLab differs. And this is how we differ from all of traditional application security. We make it an iterative process for the developer. So they get all of those scans even DASed. And the way that we do dynamic is that review app. That's kind of our secret sauce. Because when they commit their code, we spin up a review app, and that review app is used for dynamic security testing and performance testing. And all of those results come back to the developer, again, before their code is merged with anyone else's. So they can see what issues they might have created. And it also includes advice on remediation. So what would they need to do to fix it, the severity, all kinds of information. I'll show you that. And they can deal with that information and act upon it right there. What goes to the security department then is only the exceptions. It's those things that the developer couldn't fix or maybe is unsure of. Those things that remain outstanding get bubbled up in a dashboard that the security team can look at. So now you've just expanded those few precious security people. You've kind of offloaded some of that work back to the developer, where only the developer can do the remediation anyway. So from a security standpoint, there's a big advantage there as well. And the biggest part of this is that dev gets invested in the buying process. So they become engaged in security, and it's a win-win for everybody. So from a dev standpoint, it helps them stay out of the headlines, make sure that they're creating secure code, and it does so with less pain than asking them to try to figure out a security tool, or then waiting for security to become the blocker at the end, and now they've missed their deadlines. From a security standpoint, it means getting a whole lot more people engaged in helping them secure the applications and have less risk in the organization. So it's really a win-win. Now, I've got some screenshots in here, and what I like to do is kind of talk through a couple of screenshots and then go into a live demo. And we'll talk about the demo here in a minute too, but I know demos can be tricky. So if you need to stick with just the screenshots, that's perfectly doable as well. This is the merge request report that the developer sees. And so part of that is this 63 new vulnerabilities and 3 fixed vulnerabilities. This is based upon the code change that they just made. So this is not 63 vulnerabilities, and some of those might have been introduced by, Joe in the next cubicle. These are the ones that I created from this last change. I can click on expand, and let me see. So this is if I had clicked expand, this is what I would see. It shows then all of the different types of scans. So we've got SaaS, DAS, container scanning, dependency scanning, and then license management has its own line. Actually, if you see here, license management, some people don't consider it security scanning, so it's kind of got its own line, and you can expand that as well and see the details. Now, each of these vulnerabilities that is found is clickable, and you can drill down into that, and it shows here on the far right the line number. So, you know, a lot of other vendors will brag about, you know, we show the line number of the vulnerability. Well, actually, if you click that, you're actually going to go to that line of code. So we're not just telling you that's where the error is. We'll take you there as well. These vulnerabilities are assigned to severity, so they're in order of well, you can flip the order. They're showing the vulnerability priority as well. And then if I click on one of these, what happens is it pulls up even more detail. So I'm drilling down into that one particular vulnerability. And here I can see the file where it exists. And, you know, if there's more information about it, it would be here as well. Sometimes there's links to, well, like this, the Find Security Bugs. That is a link that'll show you kind of like a wiki, has more information about that particular vulnerability and what you can do to remediate it. And from here, the individual developer can either dismiss it or create an issue. And if they've already created an issue and they've seen this before, it'll have view issue, but that create issue is automated. So it gets all this information in there with the line number and everything and creates the issue for you. If I dismiss it, it's going to show up on this report as with a line through it. And I won't see it again within my project, but it will show up on the dashboard as a dismissed vulnerability. So security can look at that and say, maybe it shouldn't have been dismissed, and they can revert that or create an issue. There's actions they can take there as well. Now we've got a security dashboard, and there's 2 levels of the dashboard. So you may recall last fall we came out with a security dashboard at the project level, and it looked very much like, it's still around, looks very much like this. So it looks like the MR report. You should have fewer vulnerabilities because it's only those things that the individual developers couldn't resolve on their own. We have added now a group level security dashboard recently, and it's got a nice graphical user interface. So it shows the trends across time. That's one thing that the security teams like to see. And then they can drill down on the individual vulnerabilities from here and see the exact same thing that a developer would see. So one source of truth. I want to take just a minute to talk about compliance as well, because this can be really important, particularly for the financial services industry. So in addition to the security products that I've just gone over, the security capabilities, I should say, that of GitLab for SaaS and DAS and so forth, the other thing is we have a secure application. So you often may get customers that say, how does GitLab test our own application? And these are links. So you can go to these links here, and there's more information on each of these. And there's a process where you can actually ask our CISO's team to help respond like to an RFP or something that says how we test and comply ourselves. But then the other element, I mentioned zero trust, and part of zero trust is assume the bad guys will get in, and you want to secure your software development process as well to make sure that, you know, people that are developing the code are authorized, that you don't have a rogue individual out there contributing that you don't know about, or an insider that's changing things to, you know, divert funds in a software program or something like that. And so that we enforce a lot of audit and compliance capabilities within the overall GitLab software development lifecycle. And there's these pages here that I've developed that talk about PCI, the financial industry, HIPAA and GDPR. There's not as much there yet, but the PCI compliance and the financial services page have been very popular because they explain the controls and the individual features that GitLab has that contribute to that. And those are not, they're not like SAS testing and DAS testing. Those are features of GitLab itself, but really important to, if you're talking with security people or anyone handling risk. You know, we are very transparent. So our vision, our roadmap, it's all there. These are clickable links. Y'all have this in your reseller kit. And, you know, we have the future directions for each of these. One of the main premises of GitLab is breadth before depth. So we cast a very large net and a very wide footprint using proven technologies that are already out there. So for instance, we used for dependencies, for dynamic scanning, we use OWASP, ZAP. For SAS, we have a variety depending upon the language and we identify the language and then grab the appropriate tool to do the scan. But those are all open source tools that are out there. Over the course of the next year, we'll be adding some depth. So the open source tools, they're proven, they do a good job, they got us there quickly. Now we'll be adding some depth and in terms of capabilities and also quite likely a security research team, threat research team. Okay, so one other key point about the future that I want to mention is auto remediate. We actually have the beginnings of auto remediate already out there, but I want to share with you the vision of where we're going with this. So the idea is if a vulnerability is found, let's say dependencies scanning is the easiest example. So I've got a vulnerable code library that I'm using. Find that as a vulnerability. If GitLab can tell you that there's a more current library available that has resolved that vulnerability, why not apply that? Since we have, this is something that we can do because we're one application for the entire life cycle. This is something that no other AppSec vendor could do. We can apply that patch, run it in the pipeline, which will do, again, the security scans and the performance scans and see the results. And if we fail the pipeline, then okay, we couldn't do it. But if the pipeline didn't fail and the pipeline is successful, then we could either automatically push that patch or at least ask the developer, hey, we found this patch, we've applied it, it works, are you good to go? And so it saves an enormous amount of time and could resolve some things very early. And for dependencies, this is so important because, again, at those roundtables, one of the key things that I heard about open source and third-party code is the tremendous backlog of vulnerabilities that they're creating. So, you know, I use this piece of code and it does this microservice for me. It works well. So now 50 developers are using it, and then we find a vulnerability. So now we've got that same vulnerability in 50 different places, and it's used 50 different times. So now my technical debt is 50 issues to go repair. And so if I can stop it early and identify those things early and fix them early, then I can eliminate that backlog or avoid creating additional backlog, I should say, of that technical debt. So this becomes a really important piece. And we've started with the dependency scanning. And this is a screenshot of what we have right now. We've taken the baby step, which is, hey, there's we're flagging that there is a more recent library available for that dependency, and it's vulnerability free. Would you like to download that patch? And they click yes, and it downloads the patch. The next step will be to automate the downloading of the patch and running the pipeline. So here I would normally do a demo. What I want to, when you get the slide deck, and I'm trying to figure out how to get out of the full screen presentation back to the notes, because in the notes of this deck, here we go. In the notes of this deck, you will see a couple of things. There's a video that I've done that is the security demo. You're welcome to reuse that. There's also, if you wanted to do a demo and you wanted to show an MR and actually go through the examples, you can go to this MR deck, and the security dashboard was there as well. But let me just show you real quickly. So this is actually a live working, you saw the screenshots, but here I can click expand, and you can see these things. You can scroll down and see, for DAST and everything. What this gray dot here means is that those things haven't been dealt with. They need some attention. The X's mean I've already blacklisted these items, and so those are going to be failures. I can drill down here, as I mentioned, and see this one has a view issue. So this has already been encountered. Somebody's already said, create the issue. And so this is what it creates automatically. So you can see that it's automatically populated. I generally start, when I do a demo, I start with this MR report because it's just so useful in terms of understanding all of the different scans that we're doing and the results and how they're actionable. If you want to get into it even deeper, I'm happy to separately and show you some other kind of deeper tips and techniques for digging into these further and showing the workflow. But I think I'm going to stop there, and let's go to questions. Is it possible to define your own severity levels? I don't believe that's possible today. I think that may be on the roadmap. I will check.
Thanks,
Vivian, do you want to capture his name so we can get back to Christopher?
Absolutely. Thanks, Christopher. We will get back to you with that answer. So I wanted to open it up for any other questions via the Q&A chat. And in the meantime, we've had one extra question come in, and that has to do with our federal resellers. And the question is GitLab FedRAMP certified?
No, we're not today. Now we do offer both on-premise and on-demand. So the way around that is the on-premise option, obviously. And we have a plan to apply for FedRAMP certification.
Okay, great. And do we have any other questions from the audience? Please feel free to type it in the Q&A. We'll just give you a couple more minutes, and then we'll go to our final slides. Okay, while we're waiting, Cindy, you want to put the final slide up?
Yep. Can you see it?
Yep, great. So I wanted to give an update on, so these resources are on GitLab.com. And also in our, we have a reseller kit that is on our on our webpage under resellers, and it's a marketing kit, and that's where you will find anything and everything to do with marketing and our messaging, positioning, Cindy's presentation, our corporate pitch, lots of information there. In terms of if you're an existing authorized reseller and not on our Slack channel, please make sure to email me and I will get you added, as well as if you're not receiving our monthly newsletter, email me and I'll get you added to that. And we are also in the process of planning a sales kickoff sometime within the next 30 days. Our fiscal year has changed. It now is starting February 1st. So we're still in 2018's calendar year through the 31st of this month. So stay tuned because we plan on having a virtual sales kickoff to deliver you more content to help you sell to your customers and message to your prospects. Other than that, I think that's all we had, unless we have another question.
You can always ask me questions anytime at cblake@gitlab.com. Happy to help with security. I do help our sales folks quite a bit with security discussions, and happy to do the same for you.
That's great, Cindy. Thank you. So for all our resellers, we do have Cindy as a resource for when you are pitching the security message or have questions around an RFP or a quote. So thank you, Cindy, for making yourself available. I don't think we have any additional questions, and I think we're over pretty much at our time limit. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. Stay tuned on more sales enablement and technical enablement coming, and have a great rest of the day or evening. Thank you so much.